Good morning, everybody. Bron Pearson here from Pinnacle People Solutions, and welcome to our daily Facebook Live update. For those who were with us on Friday or who've watched Friday's video since, thank you so much for your support. We really do appreciate it. Our aim, of course, with this this daily Facebook Live broadcast is to distill as much as we possibly can for you as employers and employees as to what your options and obligations are and what's been happening in the previous 24 hours, or in this case, since Friday. So our company, Pinnacle People Solutions, provides human resource services and solutions to regionally based small to medium enterprises and not-for-profit organisations, and we're here to help you and your business through these challenging COVID-19 times. As I said, I'll be live at 9:15 a.m. every weekday with updates on new information and more detailed information about topics related to staffing and business management. Friday's topic was, of course, on restructuring and reducing staff. Our topic today is on working remotely. Please ask any questions you have as we go along. I'll be keeping a watch out on those in the chat screen, and I'll do my best to answer them, of course. Outside of this, you can contact us and our team anytime via Facebook, email or telephone, and the details I'm sure are going to appear in the comments shortly. We're also exploring getting this live broadcast available on YouTube and also on LinkedIn this week. So I know that there's some people who I'm sure you've wanted to join to this live broadcast, but perhaps they're not Facebook users. We don't obviously want to confine what we're able to do in terms of getting information out to just one channel. So we are looking at the various ways that we can do this across channels so that everybody who wants the information can get that information easily. Okay, so we have some breaking news, big changes really since Friday's broadcast. I'm just going to go through all of those with you, and there are some business related ones and some ones that will relate to people as individuals, and I think it's important for us to cover off both. So we did see some changes come in last night in terms of physical social distancing and numbers for ability to get together indoors and outdoors, and the advice to all from the Prime Minister last night was do not go outside your home unless for essential shopping, medical care, exercise or work or education if this cannot be done remotely. And I'll be picking up on that again in talking about our particular topic this morning. So in addition to that, there's been a substantial increase to the access to telehealth services. And for those of you who need to access GP, a specialist, mental health professional, psychiatrist, psychologist, an allied health professional, there is a widespread support that's been introduced for that in terms of Medicare rebating, etc. Your GP can now do a mental health plan with you via telehealth. There's a range of different measures. There's also increased measures for community support organisations and others that are supporting people in our most vulnerable groups in the community. So we will give you some more information about that. The big ticket from last night in terms of restrictions on our movement as citizens is that we now are no longer able to have more than 2 people to gather in public, of course observing social distancing of 1.5 meters, unless from the same family or household. Public playgrounds, outside gyms and skate parks, for example, will close from today. Boot camps, which were previously allowed for up to 10 people with social distancing, can now be only 2, which is essentially yourself and a personal trainer. People 70 and over should stay home and self-isolate and limit contact with others as much as possible. This also applies to people over the age of 60 who have a chronic illness and Indigenous Australians aged 50 and over. Importantly, for those of you who are in residential rental premises, there is a moratorium on evictions for 6 months if tenants are unable to pay rent. And there'll be further information that will be being released by each state in relationship to that. But there is a 6-month moratorium on evictions for residential tenants. We are expecting further information to come from the government in the next couple of days in respect of arrangements around commercial tenants and landlords. And there is certainly a strong encouragement for you as business owners to negotiate with your current landlord for any commercial tenancy that you have in order to maintain your business viability. But there will be some further government instructions and options available to you in respect of that will be coming out in the next few days. We've also heard some more details, finer details this morning, that the 2-person rule applies for indoor gatherings as well as outdoor, and it includes private properties as well. So basically, you can't have more than one friend over to your home at any one time. That said, a family split across 2 houses can meet, although common sense probably ought to be used, and the usual social distancing protocols should also be employed in those circumstances. Over the weekend, it was introduced that Australians arriving from overseas are to be quarantined in hotels for 14 days in the city of their arrival, and that's already being implemented. A little over a week ago, the Australian Banking Association announced a 6-month deferral of all loan repayments for small businesses hit by the coronavirus pandemic. It has since been confirmed that the package has now been extended to all businesses that have loans up to 10 million. So that accounts for about 98% of all Australian businesses that have loans with Australian banks. And all of Australia's regional banks and smaller banks that do business lending are all part of this commitment. So any of you that have business loans should talk as soon as you can with your bank representative about those measures. It is really important to also know, for those of you who may be needing to stand down employees or make positions redundant, that an employment separation certificate is now not required to be provided to stood down employees, but you will however have to give them a letter advising of their stand down details so that they can provide that to Services Australia or Centrelink. We are waiting to hear, hopefully later today, about a measure that has been foreshadowed this morning, that businesses are expected to be paid a wage subsidy of up to $1,500 per employee per fortnight to help pay their workers' wages while their revenue takes a hit. So we are expecting more details from the federal government this afternoon, or at the very latest tomorrow morning, but we understand that program is in the process of being finalised as we speak. It is understood that payments such as wage subsidies I just mentioned would be backdated, but we'll have more details when the plan is unveiled later today. So I would expect that we will comment on those at tomorrow's 9:15 live stream. For those of you who are business owners or managers or staff in the Armidale Regional Council local government area, the council is currently preparing a list of businesses who have closed, those who are still trading, those importantly who are hiring, and those who have changed their business models and how they're adapting, and that will be available on council's website today before lunchtime. I'd be very interested to hear from anybody who's linking into this broadcast from any other councils in the Northern Inland, particularly who have other information available that would be useful for us to share with our audience. As of this morning, health authorities in New South Wales have confirmed 127 new coronavirus cases. That takes the state's total to 1,918. The first COVID-19 case in Armidale was reported yesterday. That's in addition to 1 to 4 in Glen Innes, 1 to 4 in Inverell, and 9 in Tamworth. Okay. So my spotlight topic this morning, as I talked about, I foreshadowed last week, is on working remotely. This can be a really tricky area, and it's something that businesses have really had to come to grips with very, very quickly, and maybe that your business needs to do the same. So in terms of working remotely, there are some things that I would say about that, and I've already had some questions in the last few days about working remotely that I'm going to cover off. Obviously you may well have more, and I've just got to make sure that I'm keeping up to date with what people are commenting in the chat screen. So thank you very much for that. First and foremost, in terms of working remotely, is that as an employer, you need to be providing as much equipment and infrastructure for your employees as you can for wherever they're going to work outside of their normal place of work. And in a lot of cases at the moment, that's working from home. Not exclusively, but in most cases. You need to be able to ensure for your business cyber security as much as you can by prepping computers, mobile phones, Wi-Fi networks that are going to be used off-site, whether they be home Wi-Fi networks or in other premises. We'll provide a checklist for you on our website relating to cybersecurity, so you'll have that shortly. Be really well aware of the terms and conditions your staff are employed under when you're looking to relocate them to a different place of work, including at home, both in respect of their employment contract, if they have one, as well as if they're employed under a modern award. So they're things like span of hours, breaks, rosters, allowances, overtime. All of those things are still going to apply no matter where they're working for your business. It's incredibly important before that those things happen, of course, before the working remotely arrangements kick in. Doesn't take long to do those things, but they are important for you to do first. Once you've got working remotely established, it's incredibly important to set up regular and frequent communication mechanisms with your team. Incredibly important. Working remotely is not everybody's cup of tea. And especially if this goes on for a period of time, it's really important to keep connected to your staff frequently, and that they feel connected to you and the business and their colleagues, and that you are doing everything you can to look after their mental health and well-being, as well as their physical health and well-being while they're working away from the normal place of business. Encourage everybody that is working remotely to get up and get moving every 30 minutes and to take their regular break entitlements. One thing we do know is that it can be very difficult to set boundaries for work and home in a working at home environment in particular. And so it's really important to encourage your staff to take their regular breaks and to be getting up and moving every 30 minutes. You'll need to work out what you're going to do with staff who need to work at home, who need to work from home or need to work remotely, who also have children to care for in the same environment. That has been a topic of great interest and a lot of questions from employers, and there are a number of different options there in terms of whether you feel that the work of the business can be combined with childcare, or whether you decide that your staff that need to be in that situation need to be on personal carers leave. The main reason why you need to care about the issue of working remotely and what's involved in that process is that you are responsible as an employer for the health and safety of your staff, no matter where they're working for you. So you're just as responsible if they're working at home or if they're working in a different location to you as what you are when they're working in the location that they would normally be working in with you. Okay, so I have a few working remotely questions. Please feel free to throw in your questions, whether they're about working remotely or anything else that you are dead keen to know about. Please give them to us. In terms of the working remotely questions that I've had that I thought I would put to you and answer, is the first one. My employees are all using their home internet connections now that they're working from home. How can I protect my business from cyber attacks? So what can seem like a sudden rush to working remotely, which is what a lot of businesses have had to do in the last couple of weeks, can create additional cybersecurity threats to employees and to their employer. So this includes vulnerability to identity theft, phishing, malware, ransomware. Employers may be exposed to data breaches, privacy breaches, unauthorized access by hackers, as well as other types of threats. So we will put up a very simple tips for employees and employers to protect themselves guide, which will go up onto our website today, for those of you who want to make sure that you've got all your bases covered in terms of cybersecurity. One of the other questions we've had is, can I require my staff to work remotely? And the answer to that question is yes. You are responsible for their health and safety at work, wherever work is to be undertaken. So it is important that if you do require your staff to work remotely, that you've set them up in an environment that is healthy and safe for them. And so that is the main requirement. But yes, you can require staff to work remotely, particularly if you're working under instructions that have been given by any of the 3 levels of government in terms of how your business might be undertaken. One of the other questions I've had recently is, my boss says I can't work from home, but I'm worried about my health and safety in the workplace and want to follow the government's guidelines that work should be done at home if at all possible. Now, I mentioned that one of the things that's been reiterated over the weekend again by the Prime Minister has been that you should only be leaving your house for work or study if it cannot be done at home. If you've got a situation where the employer is refusing for you to work from home when it's perfectly reasonable for that work to be done remotely, you can actually legitimately refuse to work in the office if you believe doing so puts you at an unacceptable level of risk to your health and safety, or indeed breaches the government instructions that have been given to employers and employees. For employers or employees who want to know a little bit more about that, don't hesitate to get in touch with us. But that is something where your employees, if you've said no to working from home and you don't have legitimate reasons for why work couldn't be done remotely given the instructions we've had from government, then it is possible for your employees to legitimately refuse to work at the normal place of work. Okay, so some of the things to consider in terms of working remotely. The first and foremost question, of course, before you go anywhere down this track is, can my business work remotely, either in full or in part? And whether or not it's inconvenient for your business to work remotely or your staff to work remotely is kind of a bit of a moot point at this point in time, because we've had the government instruction that you should only be leaving your home for work or study if you have no other choice and the work cannot be done at home. If your business can work remotely in full or in part, what should I, if so, focus on what you need to do next, and I'm going to take you through those steps. If it's not possible for your business to work remotely, either in part or in full, you may have the option to try to continue trading or to stand down some or all of your employees. And I covered some of these questions and issues in last Friday's live stream, but I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that come forward from businesses in respect of that. Okay. Okay, so Michelle has asked, one of my staff members with children at home doesn't have any paid sick leave available. Can I still require him to take unpaid leave to care for them? Yes, is the answer to that question. If somebody has responsibility for the care of somebody in their immediate household, then irrespective of whether they have paid leave remaining, you can require them to take unpaid leave. You may agree for them to take another form of paid leave, like annual leave, if that's requested. Michelle's also asked, if my employees refuse to work, do I have to keep paying them? It depends on what they've refused to do, and on what grounds they've refused to do it, is the short answer to, for example, if your staff are refusing to work because they've said to you that they have a legitimate concern about their health and safety, wherever it is that they're being required to work and what tasks they're asked to be doing, you have to take that seriously. But you do have options to take disciplinary action if it's not a reasonable refusal, and that could well be another topic that I could add to the list if people are keen to hear about more of that. Okay, so what to do next in the event that you're looking to move to working remotely? First and foremost, it actually is really important to make sure you have appropriate policies in place. They don't have to be War and Peace. They can be a page or two, but they just establish the boundaries and the guidelines for your business in terms of a range of things, including things like working remotely policy, a working remotely checklist, and an ergonomic checklist. So these are things that you would have every staff member who's working remotely complete. You'd also want to have a mental health policy and a work health and safety policy. The work health and safety policy of which is required by law, and the other policies are very sensible to have in place to make sure that you're meeting your health and safety obligations. The second step would be to get staff set up appropriately to work remotely, and that includes equipment, connections, Wi-Fi, mobile, furniture, all of those things to be able to work in a healthy and safe way remotely from the main area of the business. You need to ensure that staff are still completing timesheets while they're working remotely. You're still responsible for making sure that they're able to work safely and in accordance with their terms and conditions of work, and communicate regularly and often. This is absolutely critical. We're not in this for a couple of weeks. It's quite likely we could be doing this for 6 months, so or more potentially. So it's incredibly important to get all of those systems in place up front, particularly the frequent communication. Obviously, we're always here to help anytime. You don't have to hesitate to ask us whatever it is that you want to ask us anytime. We're obviously going to be up here doing this every morning, so we'll give you updates. We've had another question: do I need to buy my staff all of these things for their homes? The answer is, if they don't have them, yes. If they do have them, you might come to an arrangement of paying a portion of expenses. But you also need to check out to make sure via the working remotely checklist that staff are well set up at home in a way that means they've got a decent place to work and chair and all of those sorts of things. So do you need to buy staff all of those things? Not necessarily if they're already in place, but you've got to make sure that they're satisfactory and they're providing a healthy workplace. Okay, so I've had a few interesting questions come in since last Friday, which I'm going to answer, and would invite you to ask any other questions. We've got about 6 minutes to go, so feel free to throw up any and all questions. I've had that question: does that include home internet access? Yes, so you need to check with your staff what their home internet access provides. Some have got unlimited home internet, in which case you have an agreement with your staff member about being able to use that or include using that for work. Some staff might need to upgrade their home internet access to unlimited in order for work use to be accommodated. You would be responsible for meeting that cost. Okay. What we would do in the event that, like for example, if you have a limited home internet access at the moment, you're going to be working from home and your employer says it'd be great if you had unlimited, the employer could meet the cost of the difference between your normal home internet access and the boosted home internet access. I hope that answers that question. And Ellen has also contributed, thank you so much, Ellen, that Telstra has increased their limits in response to COVID-19. Yes, they have. Thank you for reminding us about that. They've also increased data limits on mobiles that are on Telstra also. So that is something worthwhile to note, particularly if you've got work mobiles. I certainly went in and requested an increase to data for all of our work mobiles. So that you may want to explore that with Optus and other providers also who may be offering something similar. So one of the questions I've had in this last week was a really interesting one and a very sensible one, and I'm sure one that all of you would be interested to know about, and that is, can my employees keep working for free after I've stood them down? Now, this came about because we got information that there was a particular employer who, unfortunately, due to the nature of their business, had to stand down most, if not all, of their staff. And several of those staff took the view that, well, you know, the chances of us being able to get alternate work at the moment are pretty slim. We're going to go looking, but we're happy to just keep doing the work so that the company, you know, can come out this other end and we can be, you know, re-employed at the end of the stand down, etc. So the question coming out of that, of course, is, can my employees keep working for free? The answer to that question is that there is very little doubt in my mind that in most of those cases, if we looked in detail, that Fair Work would probably consider that to still be an employment relationship. And we're actually going to give you a link in the comments now to a guide on the Fair Work website regarding unpaid work. And the fact of the matter is, if it's work that's normally done by a paid employee, then doing tasks that are part of the ordinary operation of the business and the employer derives the main benefit from, then it's strongly indicative of an employment relationship, and therefore the employee is entitled to conditions under the Fair Work Act, including minimum wage, national employment standards, an applicable modern award, or an enterprise agreement if that's in place. So if someone's a true volunteer, which for a lot of organisations they do have volunteer people working with them, they're not covered by workers' comp. Plus there could be hairy implications with the interaction between public liability and occupiers liability insurance as well. So there's lots of implications there, but I understand the desire of the staff and the loyalty of the staff in that situation, but it would likely create an enormous headache for the employer. And if the employee were to injure themselves and they're not an employee, then at the time, because they're stood down, then they would be they would not be eligible for workers' compensation either. So the question that also came out of that, not surprisingly, is if there is still work to be done, then are stand downs and redundancy legal? And the answer to that is yes. It may be that not the entire business is subject to a stoppage. So one of the things that we've been talking to some of our clients about, which I think I mentioned last week also, was a staged stand down situation where perhaps they are progressively able to respond to government changes, supply and demand, and so forth, and make decisions about progressively shutting down elements of the business rather than the whole thing at once. And that is certainly something that you can do, either as a stand down situation or as a making positions redundant situation. So we do have 1 minute left before I sign off for today's session. So are there any particular questions that people have, or Do you have topics that you would like us to add to the special topics list for when we're delivering this every morning? If so, please make a comment in the comments function for the broadcast now, or you can private message us on Facebook, you can email us. You can also find us on LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram, and of course up on our website as well. You can make contact with us up there. So I'd like to thank you very much for joining us today. If you have specific questions about your business or you want us to help you out in any way, shape or form, please contact us on any of those means I just mentioned. Tomorrow we'll actually have a presentation from Jessica Pearson, who's our consultant psychologist. She'll be focusing on health and wellbeing strategies for employers and employees who have substantial, as we all do, amounts of worry at the moment in these uncertain times. So please invite your colleagues and friends. If you could share the invitation to this daily live stream, we'd really appreciate that. We'd love to get the word out as far as possible to as many regionally based employers and employees as we can. Stay safe, everybody, please. Wash your hands, and we'll look forward to you interacting with Jessica tomorrow. And I'll see you again on Wednesday. Take care.